Well, the FBI, it turns out, lied to a federal court in order to spy on a U.S. citizen. No big deal, say our allies on cable news. It's totally fine. Don't worry about it. And then the leaders of our law enforcement community, the intel community, lied to the public as well. It's not speculation. The IG report confirmed this. But it also stopped short of saying any of this was done for political reasons. Okay. Now the Inspector General himself is saying that does nothing to exonerate the FBI. Another twist and turn in the sordid tale of America's law enforcement agencies after the break. Well, the DOJ's Inspector General's report that came out last week exposed more than a dozen abuses of the FISA process, 17, I think, by the FBI, all for the sake of spying on a U.S. citizen who, not incidentally, happened to be working for the Trump campaign. Really no precedent for what happened. The only upside of all of this, the point that the FBI's many defenders on cable news are trumpeting, is that according to that report, these abuses were not driven by political bias, to the extent they could know that. But this week, Inspector General Michael Horowitz pushed back somewhat on that interpretation. While the investigation didn't uncover any documentary evidence of bias, it's not like FBI agents were attacking Trump voters as Walmart oh, I'm sorry, they were doing that, whatever. There wasn't, I guess, a lot of documentary evidence. That's not the same as proving that the Russia investigation was free of partisanship. Senator Josh Hawley has been watching this very carefully. He represents, of course, the state of Missouri. We're always happy to have him on the show. Senator, thanks so much for coming on. So there's a distinction, a difference, meaningful one, between saying we didn't find written evidence that this was motivated by political animus and that there was no bias, correct?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And in fact, what the Inspector General said to me, Tucker, was that there may well have been political bias when it came time for the FBI to go get surveillance warrants on Carter Page. That's the Trump campaign aide who they surveilled, who they eavesdropped on during the presidential campaign. We need to be really clear here. All the Inspector General said in his report was that when they opened the case file, that he couldn't find any evidence of bias. But opening a case file is one thing. Actually going out and getting warrants, actually eavesdropping, that's something totally different. And the Inspector General told me there very well could have been bias in that in those circumstances.
I mean, there's so many layers of irony here, but maybe the most obvious is the president was impeached yesterday because he talked to the president of Ukraine and mentioned potential malfeasance by the son of his potential political opponent in this campaign. And that's impeachable. The last administration literally pulled a FISA warrant on its political enemies, but that's no big deal? How does this work?
Yeah. Oh, you're absolutely right, Tucker. I mean, this is unprecedented in our history. The DNC, Democrat Party, paid for this dossier that we now know is totally fake. They fed it to the FBI, and the FBI used it and lied to a court, not once, not twice, not 3 times, 4 times, in order to intervene effectively in a presidential election, to get a warrant to eavesdrop on a presidential campaign. And the Democrats knew this. During the campaign, they knew it. And so they got news stories written during the campaign that the FBI and other agencies were investigating Trump, trying to influence the election. It's absolutely extraordinary. And the FBI, there's got to be major reform, Tucker. We cannot allow this to keep happening.
Really quick, would it be cool for the Trump DOJ to get FISA warrants on aides to Bernie Sanders for their ties to Venezuela, for example? Would that be all right, do you think?
Can you imagine what would happen if that were actually the case? Of course it wouldn't be all right. It would be absolutely, it would be an abuse of power. It would be an abuse of power, and that's what happened when the FBI lied to the FISA court and used paid political opposition to go out and get surveillance warrants on a presidential campaign.
Exactly. It seems very clear, and you certainly have expressed it clearly. We're thankful for that. Senator, thanks so much for coming on tonight.
Thank you.